First part of today, I wanted to get some stuff off my chest. I wanted to talk about the news, participate in the community, and say why I don't think Path of Champions is going to be the solution to saving Legends of Runeterra. And to be quite frank, I'm not too sure what the solution is, but I do have optimism because I think Path of Champions is a great starting point in terms of getting more interest and overall people into the game. Because that's what got me into the game. I was always interested in the lore. I love Runeterra in general as an IP, and I think Path of Champions is definitely a great way to fit that core identity of what its purpose is within the Riot Games catalog. This is also going to be not very edited. I think this is just going to be me rambling for the whole time. So if you want some of my more edited videos, just go check out my other LOR YouTube videos. This whole week that I've been working, you know, I haven't streamed in a couple of weeks. And, you know, last weekend, my girlfriend and I had a concert and we were spending the day out in Seattle. So I wasn't able to stream last week. But the news obviously came out just out of the blue, out of nowhere. It caught a lot of people off guard, and it seems a lot more negative than maybe we perceive it to be, because we can perceive it any way that we want. And when it's grouped in with Riot Forge, which is shutting down, it makes you associate Legends of Runeterra with failure because they're just kiboshing it. Path of Champions can bring enough new players into the scene to kind of revive the PvP environment as well. You know, that could be seen as a if-then argument. We have no sort of idea if it's actually going to work, but I think throughout the talking of this time, I want it to seem like I'm optimistic for the game, because I love the game. I'm going to be playing the game as long as I can. I've invested so much time into it, and it's the most fun I've ever had in a game. I've never really been into card games. Like, this is the first card game I've really played the actual game. I collected Pokemon cards a lot when I first started making content, and I love the card collection aspect, but I never really took time to play with those cards that I collected. And now this is the game where I don't have to spend money on packs. You know, I have spent a decent amount of money on the game, regardless of the RNG. You never know what card you're gonna get when you open a pack type. And I really appreciated LOR for that, because whenever a new expansion came out, I love playing PvP, and I love the deck building aspect. I love being able to think of how cards interact with each other to win the game. And being able to acquire those cards on the first day, like not having to buy 10 packs, spend $50 on a new expansion to hopefully get some of those cards, being able to get specifically which ones you want, and then maybe buy the pass and get the other ones in the collection over time. That was something super unique and something I really, really liked and appreciated about the game as a whole. So why am I qualified to kind of speak about this topic, speak about this manner? Well, I'll show you. I've been Masters the past 2 ranks. I've been playing for quite a while. I almost have all of the cards collected, you know? I'm only missing 20% of all the cards across all regions, which I'm really proud of. I love this game. I love this game. And if we go look at my Path of Champions, I played a lot of Path of Champions. I love the game mode, is still very fun, and I'm still going to play Path of Champions once they change things around and make their focus on POC. I put a lot of time into it. You know, that's at least 16. It's like, what, 20 something? 4, 8, 12, 16, 21. I have 21 champions at 3rd star, 3 stars. Even more, 2, and then 1. not even more, but more 2 stars and more 1 stars. Because I've played the game so long that the champions I want to play, I just go ahead and 3-star them. I like the overpowered aspect of the game mode, because there's some pretty goofy combos that you can pull off, and you can just break your character, and it's a lot of fun doing that. Why in particular is Riot shifting the focus of Path? Like, why are they shifting the focus away from PvP back to Path of Champions? And they say they want to make the game more sustainable. Well, what does sustainable mean? Able to be maintained at a certain rate or level, so they just want to be able to keep it at a base level so the game doesn't fail. Like, they're putting the game essentially on bare minimum to produce profit. And how do they do that? They cut the fat in their eyes. They cut the fat and focus on how do we get the most amount of money out of the game with the least amount of investment. They can do that by Path of Champions. And what makes sense from that perspective is it's a single player mode, so you're not having to worry about all these different players trying to break the game. Because if you're just playing against the computer, if you break the game, there's no big deal. You're having fun because you're breaking the game. And the point of it is to make the characters as broken as possible. When I'm playing it, at least. It's kind of like, oh, you have your character, so you know kind of like how that character wants to play. And then you get to choose based on randomization what supporting character you get for your main person. And how do the synergies between the two go to break the game? That's kind of like the meta for Path of Champions. Oh. The next point is that from a lore standpoint, they're probably able to create the stories and then the players get to experience it, kind of taking away from Riot Forge. I guess they might have seen the two companies as like an overlap, and if they want to tell stories, they could do so a lot easier by just adding these stories to Legends of Runeterra, and then people can just click. They have like 5 bubbles of text, and then they go through these stories and they play the games. And from a Riot perspective, it's like, yeah, we're satisfying the lore community by giving them these character battles that were significant in the LOR universe, and we just have to put in like 5 bubbles of text. And that's just not, it kind of like, sorry, excuse me. It kind of destroys the whole purpose of what cool things Riot was doing at the time and why people loved Riot Forge. And in order to make updates for single-player Legends of Runeterra, there's a lot less thinking and balancing you need to go through to ensure it's a positive experience. And that balancing requires manpower and salaries, which Riot probably isn't willing to pay. So those 3 factors are a bit in terms of why LOR is getting moved to Path of Champions. Sometimes you got to put on your business hat. You got to think from their perspective. All right, why are they doing this? And I'm not saying that this sort of behavior justifies any sort of layoffs. You know, I want to make sure that it is known that I feel, you know, my heart goes out to those 530 people that were laid off. I've been in that same position where, you know, the pandemic came around. I was working a job in Cleveland. I like moved my whole life out to Cleveland to do this job. Do this, like, hopefully be a career here, you know, make a career here. And COVID came around after a year and they laid me off. I had a lease. I had all this stuff I had to take care of. And they just said, "Up, see ya." The feeling sucks. It sucks. It really sucks. And I feel really bad for all the 530 people that got laid off. So let that statement be clear. And you know, just saying that, like, I understand that Riot had to do this to make the game, make their company a little bit more sustainable. But where this plan falls short is in a few key areas. And this is kind of the meat and potatoes as to why. And after this, we'll talk about what needs to happen for this POC transition to be successful in order to give ourselves at least a fighting chance to save the game. You know, people were saying it's dead. I don't think it's going to be dead. I think we have at least a couple of years of really good content. And then, you know, maybe year 3, we kind of reassess and see what's happening. So good 3 years to keep playing this game, day in, day out. That's my plan, at least. And what I think, why Path of Champions is not going to be able to save the game, why this is not going to happen, like the 3 main points is the AI, the game itself, the game mode itself, and the game developers. All 3 are not where they are right now to make sure the game actually succeeds. And due to that, I'm not too sure if Riot is willing to put in the resources to make sure these 3 things get changed. And after the why these are issues, I'll get into how they can fix them. So, first, the AI. The AI in Legends of Runeterra is pretty bad. It's pretty bad. It often makes misplays that make it so you just win in challenging things. Like, there's been times where I'm playing against a Lee Sin. Lee Sin decks and archetypes are pretty common in Path of Champions, and one of their common powers is that every single game, it creates a resonating strike, which one cast of it allows you to get +2 for 1 round. In that specific round, they're able to get +2/+0, and you can give something challenger. And there's oftentimes in 3-star, 3.5-star difficulty, where I go up against Lee Sin, I set up a trade. I set up a value trade for me, so I'm eliminating one of their blockers. And they clearly have enough mana up to cast this Resonating Strike. They let it go through. And then after the fact, whichever unit is still alive, they cast a Resonating Strike on that, when they could have done it in combat and traded with one of my people. And that's just one of the many examples of why the AI is bad. There's times where it doesn't cast Vengeance when it should. There's times where it casts Vengeance on, like, a 3-mana card when a champion is on board. And I don't know if they have that coded to enhance the player experience, but if you want it to be more genuine, you need to be able to prioritize it to try and make the computer win instead of giving the player a softball, so that there's a bit more satisfaction when you do win. Because when you have 3-star characters, you can break them pretty easily. And sometimes the computer doesn't even give it a fighting chance. It just says, okay, you can have a free win. I'm not new to some of these roguelike deck builder type games, or I am new to them, so I don't know if that's kind of the standard to let the character win sometimes, but if that's intentional, then maybe that point is invalid, but just kind of like, sharing my opinion. So the AI is bad, and Riot needs to be willing to make those changes and invest the money. The second is the game itself. It kind of gets back to, you know, I do enjoy being able to break the characters, but it does take a lot of the strategy out of actually playing the game. Because in Path of Champions, at this point, it's, all right, how do I break my character to earn the game as fast as possible to avoid the computer having RNG to completely destroy me? That's kind of how I feel playing in the game. When I feel like a more enjoyable experience would be picking your champion and playing the champion to the best of its abilities versus, all right, how can I make, you know, cards that aren't associated with my champion that I picked up from the shop? Or how do I make my 2-3 drop champion as broken as possible so that turn 3, the game can be over? Instead of letting the game go out to like turn 6, turn 7, and playing your characters to the best of their abilities and winning through your character. It's winning through the computer RNG random bullshit. That's how you win the game versus the strategy of the game. And some people might like that experience, but personally, I would much rather play the game strategically and not think about how can I cheese the computer so I win as fast as I can. My third point is that the game developers are they don't really know what's going on, how to play these decks. And this might be kind of a straw man call out. But my evidence, because of course they're developing the game, they know how the game is played, right? But if you're looking at the starting decks for some of these characters, I think it's pretty clear they have no idea how these characters are going to function. Some of the earlier characters definitely have better starting decks. But if we go look at Path of Champions, Jaina's starting deck feels really clunky. I know that they say it's a combo deck, but Ballistic Bot, I don't really understand how Ballistic Bot fits into Jaina's playstyle. Other than Ballistic Bot creates ignitions and then you can discard them? Huh? Or you create ignitions, but you don't even have Sunken Temple. So you don't get the value of them coming back. Oh my gosh, why is my webcam doing this? So Ballistic Bot, I don't know. I don't really know how that fits into your character. Maybe it's just a 2-drop. Howling Gale says, shuffle 2 copies of me into your deck and they cost 1. But eventually you get so many Howling Gales that you can't play enough cards to get value out of Howling Gale. But if you just try to do 1-for-1 trades with the computer, they're going to summon like 4 more 1-drops. That costs 0. Some Dredger, I guess, like, these guys are good, but it just doesn't work well in Path of Champions. The only time you're going to be getting value out of Gotcha and Patrol Wardens in this Jaina is if you play Jaina. These are only really good in Sunken Temple decks, which take to turn 5 to set up. And you don't even get Sunken Temple in this. So, with there only being like 15 starting cards, you're not getting value out of any of these cards. It just felt very clunky playing Jaina. When normally, when I play Jaina in PvP, she is fun and she feels very smooth. But the most egregious one is Neela. What? Why? When you copy the first fleeting unit or spell you play, you don't give vulnerable to anything. You don't give vulnerable to anything. So why do you want to put vulnerable on something? And its item doesn't even help it. And then Why do you want to put vulnerable on a brash unit when you want to avoid... It's a semi-elusive keyword. So, why do you want to put vulnerable on a brash unit? Only because it goes with hired gun? But it's just synergy between these two cards. It has no synergy with Neela. Because this doesn't draw you a card. All this does is allow you to attack it with her. I guess it has synergy with Neela on level 2. But how often are you reaching level 2 with Neela in Path of Champions? And this is good, but you only have like 3-4 mana you're working with at a time. So if you draw something that you can't play, you're kind of shit out of luck. You never really draw enough cards to get good value out of Slot Bot. Why do you have Tidal Invocation in here? I guess unless making brash blockers and get a wider swing. But that's a fast speed spell. And why is this card in Neela's deck? Other than these two cards have synergy, but these two are barely part of Neela's package. What? Who created this deck? It's so bad. This is the only card in Pool Shark are the only synergistic cards with Neela. And Vikrish, I guess, but what are you talking about? Why is this her starting deck? It's terrible. It's so bad. It's like it's borderline unplayable. Those are all my qualms, and how can we fix it going forward? How do we right the ship so that Path of Champions gives LOR a fighting chance? And I think it's kind of explanatory. It's, you know, make it so it's a little bit more strategic. I do really enjoy being able to break my cards, but make it so I actually have to play my champion to win. And not just play a 2-drop with 2 really good items that just multiply itself and win. Make it so it's not about cheesing the computer. Some of the powers make it so it can be really frustrating to play. Sometimes the computer just cheeses you out of the game and you just can't play it. And that is the worst feeling, and that happens often, especially when you're trying to like build up your champion levels. When you're just starting out and you're playing against some of the level 2. Like, I remember when I was playing Nautilus, it took me so long to beat him because I couldn't remove his units. Because whenever you removed the units, he would just heal. And he would just get a free level up every time. So you had to learn how can I cheese Teemo to the point where he's elusive and he just plays around him? Or how can I make my character with Overwhelm so strong that he attacks once and one-shots Nautilus? That's like, it's not... I don't like playing the game where I cheese it. And that's the strategy, is cheese. I don't like cheese strategies. I like to actually like play the game and win through the game's mechanics, not cheese mechanic. Making it so you can update your character's starting deck. I don't know if you need to go to a full-on draft where you start with your starting character and then you enter into a draft mode where you select 15 cards to add to your deck. That might take out the whole roguelike situation, but maybe have like a starting package and then you're able to add in like preferred starting cards with a certain champion, so that you can set it in the future or in the past and then start your adventure confidently that you know the cards, and that you can create supporting champions or pick supporting champions around that. So fixing that. And then I guess like some other just quality of life things. You know, making the weekly challenges and the monthly challenges a little bit more interesting. I feel like the monthly challenges are more of a chore rather than a fun, challenging experience. Because it just gets back to the whole, how do you break your character enough on turn 1 to cheese out the computer? And then at that point, it just kind of feels like I'm wasting my time because I'm just figuring out the cheese. And if I lose, I feel like the computer's cheesing me on the challenges. I never really feel like I can strategize against it. And that's why it feels like a chore. So making it so the powers maybe aren't so broken, maybe region locking some of the champions, because when I played against Jin the other day, he was pulling fast and slow and skill spells from 4 different regions. And why does Jin have access to Gotcha and Mythic Shot? You know? That's just not a fun experience for me as a player who is, you know, has a 1-star champion and trying to play, oh, you know, they only have 1 mana. I can definitely play my champion. And then it gets gotcha'd. You know? Oh. There are instances like that. That makes it very, very frustrating to play into. And the weekly challenges kind of feel like they're just hitting an RNG wheel for what champions and powers are for the weekly challenge. And it still feels like the weekly challenge is a bore. So maybe making it so the weekly challenges are lore stories. And they tell, maybe you're fighting into a Jin and his followers are part of the monastery that he's in. Or maybe you're fighting a Garen who is, you know, on the battlefield or something like that, making it so it fits with the boss's narrative, so that you have a little bit more incentive to play the weekly challenges, other than, all right, let's see this new mechanic and let's get my wild essence and my frickin', you know, my loot scroll. Oh, what to do? I got a loot scroll. You know, the only reason why I really play Path of Champions is for the wild fragments, because you can't buy them. So I'm sure the next step is Riot going to be monetizing the wild fragments, you know? Because you can see, I think, I don't know if you can see my progress bar. Yeah, I'm level 31. Oh, they made more levels. I got to the max level. But look, like level 50, like, you're just getting vaults for leveling up. You don't really have that much incentive to level up. Because in the vaults are just giving these artifacts that I already have, or it's giving wild fragments. It's giving fragments for champions I don't even want to play. So it's like, why am I investing my time? I'd rather just always get wild fragments so I can choose what characters I want to get. And you can pay to unlock, but you have to get wild fragments to level them up or get lucky in a vault. So that doesn't really make too much sense to me. You know, those are some of the things, making it a little, updating the quality of life, changing around the starting deck, and ultimately not just cheesing the system. I'm excited for them to open up Freljord. They have so much potential for this game mode, and I really hope that they pull through. Because the way that I see it is, next year, this is how I see them, the roadmap moving forward. Next year, they're still doing PvP stuff. They have one more solid year of PvP. Maybe easing back on the RUNETERRA opens, not doing broadcasts, but they have one solid year of PvP content. Next year after that is one really solid year of storytelling. New characters are continuing to come out, but they're giving more lore, and, you know, maybe they really go all out. They're adding like cinematics to fights, and they're really making the stories in depth with some of the characters, and there's new art and really good stuff. Like, they just blow Path Champions out of the water, which I could see them doing. They're Riot Games. They have the opportunity to do it, and making so many more stories, making character stories. Because some of the characters, like this Garen, you know, I like playing Garen in Path of Champions. But so far, oops, you know, they have no more 3-star stories for any character. So they have the door open. They have the chance to really make Path of Champions a sick, super sick, like the premier roguelike deck builder. They have the chance to make, and maybe that's their path. Maybe that's it. Their goal is to make Legends of Runeterra the #1 deck building roguelike experience on the market, which also happens to have PvP. And maybe that's it. Maybe that's their route. And through that, building their player base, through that, maybe some of their players are getting interested in trying out PvP. And because the game gets so big, because it's so good with the single-player roguelike experience, that people may go over. And that's how I see the game. If it is supposed to revive, that's how it becomes the game that it's supposed to be. They need to be adding more substantive experiences within the regions. And just have this massive catalog of things. Because when you're starting out, some of these may take 45 minutes to an hour, 15 minutes. So it's a lot of time to invest in. And some of these characters, you know, you have to beat Kaisa 3 times from characters of different regions, you know? And that takes time. So maybe making more quality experiences and making them less tedious, so you don't have to beat the same character, go through the same story 3 times, cheese the computer 3 different times, so that you can progress. You know? And just need to make the actual journeys more enjoyable, and they can do that through better starting decks, and less cheese, and more strategy. So that it's a more engaging experience. And it's not, how can I cheese the computer out so that I can just check a box off and level up? Because that's been my experience. That has been my experience after going through and almost beating Path of Champions, where all I have to do is beat Aurelion Soul, which, you know, I could probably do if I put in the time. But beating Aurelion Soul also just feels like, how does the computer cheese you harder so that you have to beat them on turn 1? You know, there's no strategy there. It's, oh, this champion is broken. And maybe that's their intention. Maybe that's what they want it to be. They want it to be that hard, but I just don't see any point in doing that. And that's why I moved on to PvP. And that's a great transition to what we're going to be doing next, baby, which is the Gauntlet.